for the first problem here, you have x plus 3 times 4x minus 5 equals 0. So what you're going to do simply is you're just going to set all of these equal to 0. So you would do x plus 3 equals 0 and 4x minus 5 equals 0. And so you would get, for x plus 3 equals 0, you would get x equals negative 3. And then for 4x minus 5 equals 0, you would get 4x equals 5, but that can further be simplified into x equals 5/4. You go to problem number 2, you have x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0. You would factor that into two things that multiply to equal 12, but also add up to equal 7, and that'd be x plus 3 times x plus 4 equals 0. Now that you have that, you would set both of those equal to 0, just like the last problem. So it'd be x plus 3 equals 0, then x plus 4 equals 0. You would solve that, you would get x equals negative 3 and x equals negative 4, and those would be your two answers. And for problem number 3, it's x times 5x plus 8 equals 4. So you distribute the x to 5x and 8. You get 5x squared plus 8x equals 4. Then you would take the 4, move it over to the left side, and then you would get 5x squared plus 8x minus 4 equals 0. And then you would factor that, and you would get 5x minus 2 times x plus 2. And then again, like all the other problems, you'd set them equal to 0, so it'd be 5x minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. And then you get 5x equals 2, and x equals negative 2. X equals negative 2 is one of your answers, but 5x equals 2 can be solved further, and that would be x equals 2/5. So your two answers would be x equals 2/5 and x equals negative 2. Now for the second problem here, we have x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0. So the first thing you need to do is you need to find two numbers that multiply to equal 12. So when doing that, it'd be 3 times 4 equals 12. And these two numbers also add up to be 7, which is the middle number. So you would do x plus 3 times x plus 4 equals 0. So once you have that, you'd set them equal to 0 again, and then it'd be x plus 3 equals 0, then x plus 4 equals 0. So for x plus 3 equals 0, you get x equals negative 3, and x plus 4 equals 0, you would get x equals negative 4, and those would be your two answers. For number 3, you have x times 5x plus 8 equals 4. So what you're going to do is you're going to distribute the x to 5x and 8, everything in the parentheses. And so you get 5x squared plus 8x equals 4. And you need to move the 4 over to the other side. So that'd be 5x squared plus 8x minus 4 equals 0. So once you have this, you're going to do the exact same thing. And then you would get 5x minus 2 times x plus 2. Now that you have these, you're going to set these equal to 0, so it'd be 5x minus 2 times x plus 2 equals 0. So then it'd be 5x minus 2 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. So 5x minus 2 equals 0 would equal to 5x equals 2. Divide by 5 on each side, and you would get x equals 2/5. And then for x plus 2 equals 0, you have to subtract 2 for each side, so it would be x equals negative 2, and your two answers would be x equals 2/5 and negative 2. And now for problem number 4, you have z squared over 6 minus 3z over 2 minus 6 equals 0. So you would get z squared minus 9z minus 36 equals 0. And then you would factor it again into something that would multiply to equal negative 36, but also when you add them up equal negative 9. So it'd be x squared minus 12 times x plus 3 equals 0. So x minus 12 equals 0, and then x plus 3 equals 0. So x would equal 12, and x equals negative 3. So your two answers would be x equals 12 and x equals negative 3. And now on a problem like this, you have three of them. So it'd be x plus 5 times x minus 7 times 3x minus 4 equals 0. And it's simply just like we've been doing for the last problems. It'd be x plus 5 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0, and 3x minus 4 equals 0. So you'd solve that and get x equals negative 5, x equals 7, x equals 4 over 3. Now for this problem you have z squared over 6 minus 3z over 2 minus 6 equals 0. So once you simplify that, you would get z squared minus 9z minus 36 equals 0. So once again, you define two numbers that multiply to be negative 36, but also add up to be negative 9. So in this case, you have negative 12 times 3, that equals negative 36. Then when you add those two together, negative 12 plus 3, that equals negative 9. So these would be the two numbers that you would use. Then you would set those equal to 0. X minus 12 times x plus 3 equals 0. So it'd be x minus 12 equals 0, and then x plus 3 equals 0. X would equal 12 on this side, and then x would equal negative 3. So then your two answers would be x equals 12 and negative 3. Now for the next problem, you have, instead of 2 like we've been having for the other ones, you have 3. So it would be x plus 5 times x minus 7 times 3x minus 4 equals 0. And nothing changes here, you just have another set of parentheses to deal with, so it'd be x plus 5 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0, and 3x minus 4 equals 0. So for this one, x would equal negative 5, x would equal negative 5, x equals 7, and x equals 4/3. So your three answers would be x equals negative 5, 7, and then 4 over 3. And those would be your three answers for problem number 5. Now for this problem, you have y cubed equals 36. So what you do is you get 36 on the left side, so it'd be y cubed minus 36 equals 0. Then you'd see what you could take out of that and to factor it. So you could take out a y. So it'd be y times y squared minus 6 equals 0. And now after that, y squared minus 6 could break down further into y minus 6 times y plus 6. So then you get y times y minus 6 times y plus 6 equals 0. So y, you'd set that to equal to 0, and that's already your answer for one of them. And then you do y minus 6 equals 0, and then y plus 6 equals 0. So after you'd solve that, you get y equals 0, y equals 6, and y equals negative 6. And now for problem number 7, it's x cubed minus x equals 10x squared minus 10. So you'd subtract 10x squared minus 10 and bring it over to the other side. You would get x cubed minus 10x squared minus x plus 10 equals 0. And now that you have that, you would factor by grouping. So you group x cubed minus 10x squared, and you group x plus 10. So you'd see what you could take out of x cubed minus 10x squared, and you can take out an x squared, so it'd be x squared minus, or x squared times x minus 10 minus 1 times x plus 10. So then that would leave you with x minus 10 times x squared minus 1. Now the x minus 10 can't break down into anything anymore, but the x squared minus 1 can. So you get x minus 10 times x minus 1 times x plus 1, because x minus 1 times x plus 1 is equal to x squared minus 1. So you'd set all three of these equal to 0. You get x minus 10 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, and x plus 1 equals 0. Now after you solve that, it would equal to x would equal 10, x would equal 1, and x would equal negative 1. And now for problem number 6, you have y cubed equals 36. So on this side, you would subtract 36 from each side, you get y cubed minus 36 equals 0. Now with y cubed minus 36 equals 0, you can find something that you can take out, and you can take out a y from here, so it'd be y times y squared minus 6 equals 0. Now y squared minus 6 can further break down into y minus 6 times y plus 6. So that'd be y times y minus 6 times y plus 6 equals 0. Then you set these all equal to 0, so y equals 0, that's already an answer. Y minus 6 equals 0, then y plus 6 equals 0. So once you solve that, you would get y equals 0, y equals 0, y equals 6, and y equals negative 6. And those would be your three answers for this problem. Now for problem number 7, you have x cubed minus x equals 10x squared minus 10. So what you're going to do first is right here, you're going to subtract 10x squared minus 10 on each side, and then you're going to get x cubed minus 10x squared minus x plus 10 equals 0. But before this is set to, before this is grouped together, it was x cubed minus 10x squared minus x plus 10. And what you want to do when you get that, which is done right here, you just want to group it together like that, and then set it equal to 0, which is done right here. Once you have that, you're going to find anything you can take out. You can take out x squared times x minus 10 minus 1 times x plus 10. Now that you have that, you would it would simplify into x minus 10 times x squared minus 1, and x squared minus 1 is going to be x minus 1 times x plus 1. So down here it would be x minus 10 times x minus 1 times x plus 1. You would set those all equal to 0, so it would be x minus 10 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, and so your answers would be x would equal 10, 1, and negative 1.